Yeah, well, I've always worked with women. Worked
Mm,
for women. I worked with women, and um, I, I truly believe that if your team is not balanced, you just don't have the same breadth of understanding. So this is also in terms of profiles.
mhm.
You want people with different profiles. Otherwise, you miss out points. So diversity for me is important as an element of management.
Mhm.
So I also, even when I look at investments or with companies, when we are recruiting
Mhm.
for our programs, we deliberately look at the founding teams and the management teams
Mhm.
if there's diversity there.
Yeah.
This can be, of course, gender equality, but also other diversity, because you tend to be myopic.
Yeah.
If you have only white male engineers in a team,
Uh-huh.
it's quite likely you're going to miss a lot of elements that a more balanced team would probably pick up.
Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Upkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases, and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech. Thank you for listening to episode 70. And this one is a special episode because when I started my podcast, I made a wish list of people I want to interview. And today's guest has been on the number two position pretty much since the start. So I'm proud and frankly a bit nervous to have Constantijn van Oranje as my guest on this episode. Constantijn van Oranje is the special envoy at Techleap and a member of the Dutch royal family. Since 2016, he has become one of the most influential people in the Dutch tech domain. With Techleap, he wants to turn the Netherlands into a European powerhouse for tech companies. In this episode of Women Disrupting Tech, Constantijn van Oranje helps us discover what men can do to make the tech ecosystem more inclusive. We'll talk about how he increases diversity in the teams he works with, the trends that he sees around gender equality in tech, and what he believes being a male ally is about. As we recorded this episode on September 6th, which is the birthday of his late father, he also shares how his father inspired him. So when you're ready to listen and learn how men and women can disrupt tech by creating a culture shift towards inclusion, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Constantijn van Oranje. Good morning, Constantijn. It's great to have you. It's an honor to have you. Question I always ask at the start of every podcast is how you got into your current job or current position.
Well, so my current job is envoy of Techleap, and
Mhm.
I got in the position because the government asked me at the actually on of this, by the suggestion and recommendation of my predecessor Neelie Kroes
Mhm.
and a few tech entrepreneurs. So there were Peter van der Does of Adyen,
Mhm.
there was Steven Schuurman of Elasticsearch, and then there was investor Robert Verwaayen. I think they had a conversation and said, we still need an envoy. And when
Mhm.
Neelie stepped down, they suggested me. And I think I had a track record before of working in digital matters. I was the chief of staff of Neelie Kroes in Brussels, working on digital agenda, and we already did a lot of work on startups.
Mhm.
So, for instance, we piloted the first startup manifesto of Europe and
Mhm.
digital leaders club with founders of Spotify and of Skype, etc.
Mhm.
And then I initiated StartupFest Europe, which was like a big event across the Netherlands, focused on supporting startups.
Mhm.
And they asked me to do this job, so and I stuck by
Okay.
it.
You organized that startup fest, and I have what I read about it. You got some pretty big names in,
Yeah. It was
like Mr. Cook of Apple as. I
Yeah, we had Tim
remember.
Cook, we had Eric Schmidt of Alphabet, we had Travis Kalanick of Uber, we had one of the founders, Nathan Plecharczyk of Airbnb. So yeah, we had a quite an incredible lineup, but it was a
Yeah.
big kind of entrepreneurial gamble. I think me and my co-founder Jim Stoltz, so we basically had this idea, and
Uh-huh.
it sort of materialized. Didn't I mean it was a big event in all. We had about 16 locations and 32,000 people at various events. So it really was like a festival of a week
Mm-hmm.
across the country. But we didn't know if we were going to be able to manage to get big names or big investors, or we didn't know there was a lot of enthusiasm.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it was a bit of a gamble, but it worked
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. How did you get them to the Netherlands? Did you just ask them? Or were they part of your network in any way, shape, or form?
Oh, all very different. Neelie knew of course, this is kind of known publicly, but also that she knew the CEO of Apple. I also knew him, but Neelie was the convincing part in this.
Mm-hmm.
And she also got the Uber CEO to come to the event. I through other ways got the founder or the co-founder of Airbnb, and Google was our first partner, and they offered Eric Schmidt. So we basically pieced it all together. Tried,
Uh-huh.
per person had a different strategy, and it worked out.
Okay. Meanwhile, you've become one of the most influencing or most influential people, I should say, in the tech domain in the Netherlands. Um, I was wondering, why is technology and digital important to you?
Yeah, many people ask the question,
Yeah.
and I understand the assumption. I don't personally. I don't. I've never really. I was never a techie or anything.
Okay.
I'm fascinated by technology and by science and all that. But for me, it's how it's applied.
Mm-hmm.
So I um, I look at the policy side. I look at the economics of it, and I
Mm-hmm.
think all this is really important to keep the Netherlands an innovative economy, to
Mm-hmm.
ensure jobs of the future, to ensure that the Netherlands stays relevant, or
Mm-hmm.
Netherlands, Europe. You can make it a bit bigger. And I think technology is a real important input for all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't stay with it, you miss development cycles of the technology. Like now with AI, for instance, the Netherlands is not particularly strong in developing its foundational models. So you tend to kind of then start running behind. Means that if you don't have these companies, if you don't have those capabilities, it's
Mm-hmm.
harder to attract talent. It's harder to build businesses that are
Yeah.
competitive. So my drive really is to ensure that we have the entrepreneurs, that we have the capital to be able to build innovative companies. And
Yeah.
technology is a big part of that, but it's not. I'm not gung ho on technology itself.
Ah, okay. So,
Yeah.
so
And I
not
also
a
see
tech.
that because technology is in some ways neutral, but there are also ethical issues that arise.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't say that the world with AI or the world with robotics or the world of with crypto is going to be a better world or a worse world, or how it should be shaped. I
Mm-hmm.
do know that if we want to be at least in a position to shape it,
Yeah.
then you have to have companies in those domains. You have to have capabilities, and that's basically the part where I'm focusing on.
Okay. So what I heard you say is that we're sort of lagging on AI. Does it worry you?
Yeah, well, lagging. I mean, if yeah, so if you compare us to other countries in Europe, like France and the UK,
Mm-hmm.
also I think some like Estonia, we yeah, we have a focus more on applications than on building the fundamentals,
Mm-hmm.
and we're also not kind of putting the same kind of capital to those areas that
Yeah.
other countries are doing. On the other hand, we have really good AI experts. Some of
Mm-hmm.
them Dutch people working in Silicon Valley as well, and other places in the world. And we, of course, have Max Welling as a well-known professor in Amsterdam. He also is
Mm-hmm.
active in Cambridge. And so we have capabilities definitely,
Mm-hmm.
but we have not prioritized it so far.
Okay. What do you do to get it prioritized? Is that part of your job?
Well, I think this is a part where we have where we work with the government closely to see does the government feel that it should prioritize, and that's because either we are good at something,
Mm-hmm.
and we think that we can be better, and we can have to stay up, keep up with the developments, technology
Uh-huh.
developments, but also economic developments. Then there are areas where we believe that we need to have the capabilities because that's strategic,
Mm-hmm.
like in cybersecurity or in other areas where it's like more defensive.
Yeah.
And we have areas like AI or quantum computing, where we believe that these are long-term technology trends where you just want to have the capabilities
Mm-hmm.
looking forward. So, and AI is one of those,
Mm-hmm.
and where we might differ a bit from the government, where the government is really concerned with how do you kind of implement it broadly,
Mm-hmm.
and how do you ensure that people know how to work with it? How do we're addressing the ethics of AI, which is all
Mm-hmm.
really important. We are more looking at, are entrepreneurs using it? Are the fundamentals there? Do they have the infrastructure to be able to build businesses? And that's a slightly different focus.
Okay. I want to shift gears a bit. You mentioned that Neelie Kroes was your predecessor
Yep.
at Techleap, and you also worked with her when she was in Brussels, working as a European commissioner. How did she influence you?
Oh, well, in many ways. I mean, I think I was surprised by her leadership style. I mean,
In
I
what
went.
way?
She she is extremely original in connecting ideas. Um, she is maybe one step back.
Yeah.
For me, I would say Obama was a leader where I thought, someone who is really smart,
Mm-hmm.
knows the content, communicates well, is very conceptually kind of
Mm-hmm.
sound. Neelie is much more is very committed to content, which I really liked. She had no political agenda anymore. She was at the end of her political career. She didn't care, so she was very brave to experiment. So
Uh-huh.
very open ended. Let's do this, and then we would say, well, how? And she made this point to us. Well, I have 10 ideas, and maybe 9 of them are not good, but the one you wouldn't have had.
Yeah.
It was up to us also, and actually gave her a present at the end of her tenure. Was a box, and she always talked about you have to think outside the box.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, this is the box because we always had to put her ideas back into the box, because an
Yeah.
idea that's out of the box is never going to be executed, especially not in government. You have to kind
Yeah.
of find the right box to put it in. So that was our
Mm-hmm.
job, is to take her ideas and then try to structure them and put them into a box so that they can be executed. So I gave her a box, the Neelie's box, with all of our inputs
Idea. Yeah.
to kind of make sense of it. And so, what was incredible about her is that she had a drive, and she managed to motivate people
Uh-huh.
across a really broad range of topics. From female entrepreneurship to ambient assisted living, which is like a health,
Mm-hmm.
telemedical applications, and
Mm-hmm.
spectrum policy, which is again is very technical, completely different. Quantum computing, integrated photonics, all these kind of things, and then very legal stuff like the review of the internal market for telecoms.
Mm-hmm.
So, and all of these, she was a visible face. And usually we think like focus, you have 2 or 3 topics, and that's what you're driving on. But she was
Mm-hmm.
driving all of them, and I think she made an incredible impact. I think she was quite a remarkable European commissioner in that sense, and really putting on the map the digital agenda.
Yeah, that's what she did for sure. Absolutely. Did she also help you to appreciate the diversity as a topic?
Well, it was a topic, but when I joined her team, we
Huh?
had a full male team,
Ah,
except there was one female colleague. She was the deputy head of cabinet, but she left, and then we only had men. I said, "Neelie, this can't be true.
yeah.
Definitely not for you." And then, I mean, not to credit myself, but when I took over the team, we turned it around, and in the end, we had only 4 men left, and
Mm.
of a team of 17. We did really turn it around.
How did the men respond to that?
Oh, everybody. I mean, this was a diverse team in many other ways. So
Oh.
it was not that it was not gender equal,
Mm-hmm.
but it was diverse in many other ways, and men were very open about this, and we actively sought out the best talent, but we kind of did. I did look for more balance, also a gender balance in the team.
Hmm.
But we had other discussions too. I mean, this was at a time there was a discussion about quota, for instance, about quota
Yeah.
for women on boards. Neelie was a bit torn between those two. She was, as a liberal, said quota is a bad idea,
Yeah.
but she also, and also she was always the one, the first in her university. She was the first in many ways
Hmm.
as a woman in positions, and so she always did it herself. And I think that was a big driver for her. So like, why do we quote everybody can? If I can do it, everybody can do it. I think she also made the shift that at a certain time, you need to break through patterns, and
Hmm.
then quota can be important, ideally temporarily,
Yeah.
but you have to break through certain patterns that are dominated by the dominating group. In this case, men leading companies means
Yeah.
a male culture. It means that women always have to adapt to the existing culture. It'll be harder to get in, harder to be successful, and you have to break that through. So actually, she pivoted from being anti-quota to being pro-quota in certain conditions, and I think I support her in that. Yeah.
Yeah. So more broadly, what I hear you say is that you already had that diversity mindset, like I want a gender balance in the team, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've always worked with women, worked
Mm.
for women, I worked with women, and um, I, I truly believe that if your team is not balanced, you just don't have the same breadth of understanding. So this is also in terms of profiles.
Hmm.
You want people with different profiles, otherwise you miss out points. So diversity for me is important as an element of management.
Hmm.
So I also, even when I look at investments or with companies, when we are recruiting
Hmm.
for our programs, we deliberately look at the founding teams and the management teams
Hmm.
if there's diversity there.
Yeah.
This can be, of course, gender equality, but also other diversity, because you tend to be myopic.
Yeah.
If you have only white male engineers in a team,
Uh-huh.
it's quite likely you're going to miss a lot of elements that a more balanced team would probably pick up.
Yeah. Also in UX, at least that's the one that comes to mind because women look at screens differently from men.
Well, but it's in everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. It's also in understanding the market. It's understanding how you buy, how you engage, how you
Mm.
communicate, and and it's not just women, men, but it's much more than that. And we have a very diverse society,
Yeah.
and the talent is also very widely spread.
Hmm.
So it's also, if you want to, and this is actually how we translate it to the companies, because we have
Hmm.
been struggling a bit with diversity, inclusion, equity. How do you, we're not a social a social societal
Indeed.
program. We
No.
don't we I mean so we didn't see it as our duty to make the Netherlands more inclusive. We
Uh-huh.
did see it as our duty to see, well, how can we make companies scale faster?
Yeah.
And we see that a lack of inclusion or culture of inclusion, it can be a real barrier, especially when companies scale. They will not find all the talent in the Netherlands, so you have to
Yeah.
attract people from outside, and they don't speak the Dutch usually.
Yeah.
So if you have a very Dutch dominated and monoculture, then
Yeah.
it's unlikely you're going to actually be able to attract those people. So you have to be actively engaged in different networks.
Hmm.
You have to have a culture that embraces those differences,
Hmm.
and that is actually a very strategic element in the growth of tech companies.
Yeah. How do you build that at Techleap? Because you have a quite diverse team, I think.
Yeah, so we have a very diverse team. Also, we learned a lot. We didn't.
Mm.
I mean, we were focusing a lot on gender equality in the beginning. We had
Mm.
about 60, and at a certain point, 70 to 30%. So women versus men. So we had a
Mm.
majority of women, and we felt we're doing really well.
Yeah.
Then one a colleague, a former colleague, when she left, and I asked her, she was very kind of, she was a British Italian, and she and I asked her, like, basically, how was your time at Techleap like?
Huh.
And she was very specific. Said, "Well, for you, it's easier to hire someone from New Zealand than someone from Rotterdam Zuid." And then she had a point. Actually, we had a team with 12 different nationalities. Now, actually, we have 35 people, and of the 35, we have 15 different nationalities. So,
Hmm.
in terms of international, in terms of gender, we are very diverse.
Hmm.
But she was right. I mean, we in our recruitment we had a specific. Actually, the people that were recruiting people that looked very much like them.
Yeah.
So actually, we had an over representation of a very kind of pragmatic, action oriented white women.
Hmm.
uh, and they were doing, they're great in project management, events, and all that. But and then we saw that this was actually not, it was not diverse, and we were lacking certain skills. And so we changed our recruitment process, and then
Hmm.
immediately things changed, and we became more open, more international. And also did trainings, and we did quite a lot of work to make sure that our culture became more inclusive, and we're still working on it.
Yeah. So, what in terms of, out of curiosity, what in terms of recruitment practices did you change?
Well, the most simple intervention was just put someone else there with a different background, with a different view. Actually, someone she was Argentinian,
Uh,
and put her in the team. Just make sure that from the start there was a different view, and also kind of make sure that when you have your short list of candidates, make sure that is also, you look at it through that lens. You say, hey, wait
mm,
a minute. These all look the same. Aren't there other profiles that at least give us a better feeling of different views on that same function?
yeah.
So and you have to, I mean, make it deliberate. I mean, if you don't acknowledge this, and if you don't organize for it, it's likely not going to happen, because a
Yeah.
lot of these biases are very implicit.
Yeah, I read this morning that there was a study. I think it was on LinkedIn. Sort of the main point there was that if people are landing in an organization where differences are acknowledged and in a positive way, they feel more included. Whereas if it's pointed out as a difference, so in a more negative way, they actually feel more excluded.
Yeah.
And that doesn't only that was the point that struck me a bit. That was also the case for people who were already in the team. They also felt more included if differences were like seen as a positive.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's, and I mean, we I think we don't acknowledge enough that everybody's different. Everybody
Yeah,
has a
yeah,
story. So some differences are clear from the
yeah.
on the surface, but if you start, and I think this is the key, is inclusivity much more than diversity. But inclusivity is about understanding, or at least being interested in people's background. Where are you coming from?
Yeah.
Acknowledging that people have different interests, and also, I think acknowledging that we are not programmed like that. We are
Mm,
programmed to categorize people,
yeah.
and so you have to deliberately, you make an effort, but also acknowledge that this is a work in progress.
Mm,
You have to keep working on it. You have to keep communicating about it, because the natural tendency is for people to look at differences, because
mm-hmm.
that's how we're trained. Our brain is
Yeah.
trained that way, and then to switch to, hey, can we make those differences your superpower?
Yeah.
But also make sure that everybody feels safe to express themselves, feel safe to be what they want to be in the office. And I had actually had a conversation about this when we were doing DEI training, and one of the things that we were talking about is to bring your whole self to your work, to your
Yeah.
job. I said, well, I don't maybe want to bring my whole self to the office. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm trained in the 90s. That was my first job.
Uh,
You put on a suit, and you put on a tie, and you start behaving like you behave in an office.
yeah.
So you leave most of yourself at home, and
Mm-hmm.
you bring your professional self to the office.
Yeah.
And that has a lot of deficiencies,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of the quality of people, and a lot of are missed, and then a lot of misinterpretations of people's interests is also are of course more prone, but
Mm,
it had an advantage that it's like with a school uniform. Everybody's kind of equal. You have
mm,
a kind of set of norms which you apply, and then that gives a certain safety because
yeah,
you know what is good and what's bad. Um, so that's much less the case, and you don't know how much personal feeling comes into your professional life now. We also have the extra dimension of working at home and working in the office. So
yeah,
a lot of that stuff. On one hand, you're now able to look into people's homes and you see private life, and it's
yeah,
much more normal that a kid jumps on your lap, or
yeah,
that there are things happening that are
yeah,
not considered professional. On the other hand, a lot of that person is kind of exposed, and you might actually want to keep bits for yourself, and you
yeah,
want to be able to be in control yourself about who you allow access to that,
yeah,
and there has to be space for that too. So
mm-hmm,
it's finding that balance, which I find pretty challenging nowadays
yeah,
in organizations, but it's crucial if you want to create a inclusive environment.
yeah, yeah. That's I absolutely agree with that there needs to be a balance. Yeah, bringing your whole self, including all the drama, to the office sometimes also does. Yeah, I've let me put it this way. Uh, when my girlfriend was really sick, she had gastric cancer. She recovered,
I'm
by the
sorry.
way, fortunately.
Good.
But when she was sick, office for me was sort of yeah, for lack of a better word, safe space where I didn't have to think about that.
Yep.
So it also provides a function that you can use, and that
Yep.
if people are able to do that,
Yeah.
they can actually get some seriously good stuff done.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And on the other hand, what I really liked in not having the frame anymore,
Huh?
because I don't know if you remember, but in the end of the 90s, there was a Dress Down Friday, and
Yeah.
you had like so it and it always kind of fluctuates when the banks and other organizations
Uh-huh.
had difficulties, actually hiring people.
Yeah.
And of course, in the 90s, everything was .com, and everybody was leaving for starting businesses, and then it became very informal. And then after the .com bubble burst, things
Yeah.
became more formal again and became
Mm.
more informal. But I think that's the wrong bit. It's like when you go to your client and you act formal, and so it becomes very kind of fragmented. And what I really
Mm.
like also at Techleap, maybe everybody basically wears whatever they want. If it's summer, you wear your shorts. If you
Mm.
want to come to office in a bathing suit, that's also fine. And it does allow people to express themselves in ways they want or they feel comfortable. And if somebody wants to wear a suit, well, you can wear a suit.
Mm.
That's also good. And for me, it's been also pretty liberating.
Okay. We talked about superheroes. I was wondering who your superheroes and role models are.
Yeah. Or we talked about superpowers, but
Superpowers also. Huh?
because I'm not very good at superheroes, role models, and all that. I think you can take because it kind of elevates people to something they don't really want it to be, probably themselves, because everybody is flawed, and role models or superheroes are like
Mm.
bigger than life. So, but I do think that there are elements in people
Mm-hmm.
that, like I mentioned with Neelie, but that are that can be very inspiring. And I mean,
Yeah.
I had my podcast of myself, Scale Lab, and
Mm.
we actually were looking for founders of Dutch tech companies, or Dutch,
Mm.
yeah, and see how and why they were successful. Because many people complain it's hard to build a business in the Netherlands, but some of them have been super successful. So, what
Yeah.
is the secret? And I thought that really inspiring. And doesn't mean that all these people are as persons heroes, but it's
Mm.
if you look at them through the lens of a tech entrepreneur,
Mm-hmm.
and the rigor in which they applied their vision
Mhm.
and how they kind of approached building their business, really like an Olympian athlete, very
Yeah.
kind of disciplined. And I must say I'm very impressed by that. But it's not me. I'm not that disciplined. So, but it's still very inspiring.
Yeah. But
And if you ask about role models, blah blah blah, I'd say, well, someone who's influenced me a lot in my life is my
mm,
father.
okay.
Actually, by the way, it's today as we were recording this, the 6th of September.
Mm.
It's his birthday, um, and yeah, and I mean, he was important to me because he kept challenging me. He didn't like conformism, and he came out of a very conformist culture, German, traditional culture,
Uh-huh.
even though he grew up part of his life in his youth in Africa. So that probably kind of also gave him different perspectives.
Uh-huh.
But he just really genuinely disliked cliches and people that would not think independently. I mean,
Yeah.
just yeah. So he was keen to always kind of force you to think for yourself, and so he really helped me. I wanted to study law. He said, law is boring. Why didn't you do art?
Yeah.
I was kind of slightly talented in drawing and stuff, so he really tried to push me to explore my talents instead of choosing the comfortable path.
Okay.
Of course, I didn't listen, but
Oh, because I was about to ask, okay, what did you do with the arts part?
yeah, no, I told him,
Are you still interested in art?
I'm interested in art. Yes, I'm still also associated with art institutions like the Rijksacademy
Mm-hmm.
or World Press Photo. I mean, I love photography. I buy art. I create a little bit, but hardly anymore.
Mm-hmm.
No, my point was I didn't want to make it my job,
Uh-huh.
and I thought I was not. I actually had a friend who was better than I was,
Mm-hmm.
and in that, and that was in primary school already. So I thought if you have a class of 30 and there's already someone better than me, that's going to be hard to be competitive. But also, he then actually went on to become a designer, and then to be a designer in a studio where you're basically just producing,
Mm-hmm.
and it sounds great, because you're maybe if you're working for an architect, you're doing
Mm-hmm.
incredible things, but in the end, you're just clerk in an office, and it's not that great and
Yeah, it's
creative. So
production.
yeah, so if you either choose art and you're completely free, which then you have to have a real conviction. I mean, your
Yeah.
art has to be your medium, because it's not going to be easy to sustain a living.
No, for sure.
Yeah. So and that was, I didn't have that. I didn't want to go out and make art. So I didn't pursue it. And I went to choose something actually also related to him. So I did law, and then I did business school. What I wanted to do is challenge myself in thinking more objectively. So what I thought that law could actually provide is you look at a problem by first stating the problem, then you look at jurisprudence and you look what the law says, and then you
Mm-hmm.
come to a synthesis and you come to a conclusion. But it's always trying to objectivate what your judgment
Yeah.
instead of opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And that is something I did actually see with my father, which I thought I wanted to challenge me to become less opinionated and more kind of neutral or objective in my assessment.
Okay. That
I don't know, but my father kept saying, "Yeah, I am not like that. You project stuff on me that I don't." He said he didn't feel that he was that objective, and he felt it a bit as a burden. I think that I saw that in him, but I think we settled on that. Then, well, okay,
okay.
allow me to think that, and then that's fine.
Okay. I want to shift gears a bit.
Yep.
You've been involved in startups since 2016. At least Techleap, I think you started in 2016, right?
Yeah, we started. I took over Startup Delta from Neelie in 2016,
Yeah.
and we started Techleap in 2019.
Oh, yeah. Sorry,
Actually,
that was
20
yeah.
formally. Yeah.
So, what changes have you seen when it comes to women in the ecosystem? Have you seen
Um,
that percentage grow or
well,
stabilize or?
the percentages haven't grown because that much, because the whole thing has grown, and women have grown with it, but not,
Hmm.
I think, men have grown faster, maybe and we've seen, especially in terms of investment euros,
Yeah.
most of the investment goes to big companies. So because they do rounds of a few hundred million,
Hmm.
there's no female-led companies in that category. So it kind of enhances the statistic that
Yeah.
most investment goes to men. I think what slightly improved is that when women raise money, that they used to raise much less than men. So even in a round, if a male-led team would raise 1 million, a female-led team would raise, let's say, 600,000. So
Hmm.
there was the discrepancy there too. That has probably improved a bit. I think more female-led companies are actually looking for funding. Before, a typical thing with female-led companies were, at least in terms of the statistic, were that they waited much longer to raise capital,
Yeah.
or wouldn't raise capital at all, or raise less. So men tend to kind of present themselves bigger and go out more
Hmm.
to get capital. So that has changed a bit. I think there's more awareness. Which definitely changed is the number of women engaged in venture capital. So
Yeah.
we actually did a program Fundrite to raise awareness among venture capital funds, that they needed to think differently, present
Hmm.
themselves differently, be much more accessible for female-led teams. Ask the same, be aware that they were asking different questions to women than they were asking to male
Yeah.
founders. So that has changed a lot. There are female-led funds. That's also new. I mean, Janneke Niese and Eva de Mol have done a lot to communicate about this, to invest in women, and be very visible, but not
Hmm.
in a kind of a social kind of enterprise manner, but really out there, looking for the best companies and making sure that the best female-led teams actually came to venture capital and allowed them to be invested. So I think that has changed,
Hmm.
and we've seen more women in tech in general, but it's still very unequal, and we're monitoring it very closely, and it's still a definite concern that we have
Yeah.
too few women leading companies. And we also see that when there are female founders, they often don't take the CEO role. So they'll be the CFO, the CMO, COO, but they, for whatever reason, some will say it's because uh, investors want to see a man, so which is a
Hmm.
real annoying
Yeah.
reason,
That's
but it still exists.
how do you counter that though?
Um,
Especially
I
that part, the sort of assumption also in women,
Yeah.
that investors want to see a man.
Well, I think it just has to change, and I think it's not by making women present more like men, but it's raising awareness among founders. It's and about among venture capitalists. It also means that we are more clear about what main indicators are venture capital funds looking for, so you
Hmm.
can play on that. I think, yeah, it's also time. I think if you see a critical mass of successful tech women,
Hmm.
either on the investment side or on the entrepreneur side, that it will eventually change. The question is, like, how fast will it change,
Hmm.
and will it change enough? And
Yeah.
I think there we need to do more.
Okay. So I read somewhere that you're a fan of thinking bigger to get bigger, better results. How would we apply that to getting more women into tech, into the tech space and into tech startups?
Yeah, I mean, that should really happen, I think, at education level.
Hmm.
And we should be in general, we should have much more kind of entrepreneurship education embedded in our universities, in our schools, in making sure that people, men and women, see entrepreneurship as a viable option instead of just
Hmm.
being an employee. So I think that's probably the most important. But on the other hand, it is a personal choice. I mean, I don't,
Hmm.
especially in the Netherlands, where being an entrepreneur is hard. So you can't really force anyone to become an entrepreneur. It has to be a deliberate choice of the individual to become an entrepreneur.
True.
So you can basically just create an environment where they might choose to do this. In the end, it's their choice. So I think it's hard to say thinking big. I can think big
Mm.
about this, but I can't force people to
No, that is true. But if you would think big, what would you do?
Well, I really think, as I said, and dare to look at the basis. So look at at education,
Hmm.
uh, and not only entrepreneurship, but also in the technical studies. Make sure that we kind of have information campaigns, or and that actually kids and parents can consume. So also through the platforms like
Hmm.
TikTok and others, so that that also women or people with migration backgrounds or any kind of demography that is not currently taking the opportunities that tech entrepreneurship offers,
Hmm.
to make them aware, to give them the skills, and to give them the access that they need to be successful. And sometimes you need to help. I mean, sometimes we also looked at this. We asked female entrepreneurs, would you like a female only program? We do kind of scale up support programs like a Rise program or Pole
Hmm.
Position. The feedback actually was no. One is we don't own only women, so it also has to be intersectional. So
Hmm.
that's one. Two, we don't want only women program. But we do want time and space that we can spend together to share certain things that are specific to female entrepreneurs. But on the whole, they want to be part of the regular programs and compete at that level, because that's what the world also expects from them. Um, but it is important to acknowledge it, and basically go and ask what's going to help. So any incubator in the Netherlands should actively recruit and support and see how they can bring more women in and more people from minority demographies,
Hmm.
um, and support and acknowledge that they have bigger challenges than the kind of the standard
Yeah.
entrepreneur.
They have a different path to success.
No, it's the same path to success, but the road is sometimes longer,
Yeah.
and
Sorry,
they
that's what I
meet
meant to
more
say.
obstacles. Yeah, and you have to make them clear.
Yeah.
You have to, and we don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel all the time. If we know that these obstacles are there, address them. I mean, many women still are still the ones in the homes that are running the families and responsible for the kids.
Hmm.
It's also means talking to your partner,
Hmm.
uh, how you deal with this responsibility, also the emotions of the responsibility, because you might be able to share the responsibility for education and kids, 50-50.
Hmm.
You might One might feel like more like 80, and you want to do more. You still feel bad about not being there with your kids, and we see that is more prevalent with women.
Yeah.
So we find that at social events where you build your network and all that, that women often prioritize their family before going to the social event, whereas
Yeah.
the men might go to the event. And actually, so all these things you have to acknowledge. You have to be able to talk about them and not be shy about talking them. Sometimes it's embarrassing. Sometimes you think, well, you can't talk about that because it shouldn't be like that. But yeah, if it's a fact, create a
Yeah.
space, a safe space where these kind of things can be discussed.
Okay. Is that also how you, if you represent tech on a government level, do you also, by the way, do this for diversity in the tech space?
No, so I don't really represent the government on tech. I mean, so
Sorry, I
yeah,
meant to say that you represent tech towards the government.
sort of. But
Yeah.
we make sure that it's always a topic. Like we had an initiative on diversity, and then when we negotiated with the government the next subsidy,
Mm-hmm.
first there was some discussion if there would be subsidy at all. But then when we did get subsidy, they said, well, we don't think you should be doing diversity as a program.
Mm-hmm.
And because we have other programs doing diversity, and you should focus on tech entrepreneurs, irresponsible,
Is irrespective of,
irrespective of exactly of
uh,
backgrounds and all that. And we said, well, we think diversity is important, and we are doing this. So we negotiated with them at least a year additional subsidy so we could build the diverse leaders in tech community and
Uh-huh.
spin it out. So we actually next week is going to be the last the 15th of September, the last day that we are actually funding the diverse leaders in tech community, and now it is a social enterprise and with a structure of a corporation
Hmm.
where we are still a participant in the corporation as Techleap, and
Hmm.
but it's now going to be a standalone organization.
Yeah.
So this is the way how we try to work, and we say, well, if we can't retain it within Techleap, we will spin it out
Hmm.
and try to give it the best opportunity to become a sustainable organization, and we will still collaborate, of course. Yeah, but that's also a bit of the how working with your biggest funder sometimes works.
Yeah. It's those who in good Dutch wie betaalt bepaalt.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can't translate that to proper English, by the way. If we want to get more, we briefly already talked about this. If we want more women in tech, if we want women also to be able to disrupt tech, what role can men play?
Yeah,
So besides the also taking care of duties at home that
yeah,
like kids.
yeah. Well, being a good ally. Also, when there are no women around, stand up for them.
Hmm.
So if I think that's in its basics, it's even in social circles when people are making stupid sexist jokes or whatever.
Hmm.
Stand up for women. I mean, you have to do that for anyone,
Hmm.
and I think that's where you really show if you if you believe and if you care that equity is a true an essential element of how we live and work together.
Yeah.
So and you have to express that, you have to breathe that. I think that's in the basics most important. And then yeah, be aware of these things. I mean, I, for instance, we sometimes you try to do everything right and you still make stupid mistakes. So like we
Yeah.
had a big event called the State of Dutch Tech,
Hmm.
and then and then afterwards we did an assessment like how good were we on inclusion, and we didn't provide a space, for instance, for women that breastfeed.
Hmm.
We've got little things like that. We didn't take into account people with certain of lesser abilities, like people that might have auditive problems or. And we did this one, the first summit of the digital leaders in tech, where it was so incredible to see, if you do think about these things. I mean,
Hmm.
the coffee, you could get a coffee, but it was served by deaf, dumb barista.
Hmm.
So, and it had like a sign, how do you call it, deaf
Yeah. Sign language.
sign language, explained how you say cappuccino and
Uh,
all this, and you'd force people to kind of to learn and to
yeah.
think, express themselves, and that was just such an eye opener. Again, you think you start to, I can have two cappuccino, and he would look at you like, okay, you know, your best and try.
Look at the sign, please.
Yeah, so there's so many things we can do to make life also a bit better, and
Hmm.
to realize that, and because once you do that, you start realizing, okay, this is just something we can see or we can hear or we can basically touch.
Hmm.
There's so many things with people that we don't know, and just to be more aware that these differences are there, and that you should be more curious about the people that are around you, is I think really benefits us all, actually.
Sounds like a great place to move to the last question. So my objective is to make this podcast obsolete by 2032. Um,
Great
uh,
objective.
yeah, I think so too. So by then, diversity and inclusion, especially the inclusion part, are considered to be the new normal in at least tech. maybe not in the world yet, but hey, there's then that's the next step. Uh, what do you believe is necessary to get there?
Of course, you have to become a member of the Diverse Leaders in Tech
I
community.
am.
That's okay. So that's one everybody should be a member. I mean, because we develop a toolkit that can support you, and there's a benchmark and all that. So first and for all, we have to collect data.
Yeah.
I think we you need to know, and if you don't know, then you can't do anything. So
Mm,
companies need to collect diversity data in a way that is, of course, privacy proof and all that.
mm,
Then when you know, you have to start working actively to deal with them. So also in your recruiting, I'd say kind of blind recruiting, but also self-identifying. I mean, you have to do all kinds of things that where people also make clear what who they are, who they want to be, and that you can actually address those in your organization. But at a macro level, if you really say, in the Netherlands or in the Dutch tech community, you would be obsolete, then it really is a cultural thing, and it is how we interact with each other that is super hard to change. So it has to
yeah.
be much more than programs or in your company. We have to keep talking. So your podcast has to be basically has to reach many more people, and in a way that where people understand that this is not a burden. This is actually a way to live and work together in a
Yeah.
much more productive and also nice way. I mean, this is
Yeah.
really. So I think we also maybe have to emphasize the fun much more, and how it improves our lives, and not make it only a really heavy thing where people
Mm,
are feel guilty about things. So that I think is the biggest challenge. You're turning diversity into something that and inclusion something that you're proud of, something that you feel why people make feel at home,
mm,
how people feel they can get the best out of them, that they're challenged to do that, to be the best version of themselves, but also
yeah.
to encourage that in other people. And it's a big cultural shift that we need. And so I really hope that you can amplify your message in a way that you won't be necessary anymore.
Yeah.
But maybe it's something you have to keep doing. Maybe this is not something that you can put
No,
a
but
time limit
yeah.
on. We have to keep re-engaging with each other. We have to keep reaching out. And this is, maybe your conclusion should be you have to keep doing this, and it's not going to stop.
Okay.
And I
S-
will have to keep doing this as well.
Yeah. Sounds like a great place to wrap. Constantine, thank you very much for this really great conversation. If people want to learn more about you, connect with you, learn more about Techleap and about diverse leaders in tech, where would you like to send them?
Easy is, of course, the website, Techleap or Diverse Leaders in Tech. Of course, you can follow us on socials as well.
Hmm.
But no, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak about this topic,
Yeah.
and thank you for the work you're doing.
Well, it was an honor to have you. I really, yeah, I mean that. So thanks very much for this conversation. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you for listening to this special episode of Women Disrupting Tech with Constantijn van Oranje on how men and women can disrupt tech by creating a culture shift towards inclusion. Constantijn and I hope that you've enjoyed our conversation as much as we did. And if you'd like to learn more about Constantijn van Oranje, his work at Techleap, or about diverse leaders in tech, feel free to connect with him via the links in the show notes. As a member of Diverse Leaders in Tech, I can absolutely recommend that you check out their website and follow them on their socials. As usual, you can find the show notes with all the links in it on womendisruptingtech.blog. On the same website, you can also become a member of the Women Disrupting Tech community. Members get early access to new episodes, and in the weekly newsletter, I'll share with you what I learned from each of the episodes. Plus, you'll be the first to hear when new blog posts about women who built the internet come online. So check out the show notes for a link. When you're looking for a role model to inspire your own hero's journey in tech, I invite you to check out one of the other episodes of this podcast on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. And if you're a regular listener, please give the show a rating or a review because that way you help other people discover the podcast. If you're a male ally and you want to help the Women Disrupting Tech make this podcast obsolete by the end of 2032, there is a simple thing you can do. Please share the podcast with friends, family, and coworkers, because this way you give my guest a platform they need to make it happen. Finally, if you want to connect with me, you can reach me via dirkjan@womendisruptingtech.blog, or you can send me a DM on LinkedIn. On LinkedIn, simply type in my name and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, keep being awesome.